Good morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Allen, and I'm joined by my usual broadcast partner, former NHL defenseman Tom Laidlaw, who played 11 seasons for the New York Rangers and Los Angeles Kings. This is the Laidlaw and Allen Report. We come to you twice a week, talk all things hockey, and our special guest is one of our regular guests. We'd love to have him on, Eric Erlandson of LightningInsider.com, and he's covered the Lightning for a long time. And Eric, I watched this team, and a friend of mine said, they don't seem to have the defensive dedication that they've had in the past. And I said to him, well, if they're going to score 5 goals a game, does it really matter? If you have to have 6 to beat them. Plus, I mean, you and I, don't we, Eric, know that when it comes time, they're going to play some defense?
They are, and this series against Florida, it's just been so wide open. I'm sure both coaches are probably not pleased with how wide open it's been at times, but it's been entertaining and it's been fun from a fan perspective and to watch the games. But like you go back to Game 2 and how well defensively structured they were in Game 2 against Florida to win that game. It was a 3-1 game, but it was essentially a 2-1 game with the empty netter. So they can do it, but this Florida team, I'll tell you what. They really like to push the pace. They really like to get the puck up the ice. And I think that's kind of forced Tampa Bay to open up a little bit just because, we saw it in Game 3. They tried to defend in the third period with that 2-goal lead. It disappeared quickly early in the third, but they tried to defend with it too much and rather than trying to push the pace themselves and to cut up to them. So I think they've kind of figured out that maybe they just need to be a little bit more up the ice with the puck rather than just trying to dump and change and protect leads.
Eric, first of all, a little disappointed you didn't have a blue microphone in front of you like last time we had you. He'd give you a hard time with that.
Yeah, I've been trying to work on this. There's more of these videos, right? So I gotta kind of have different ways for a better microphone.
All right, yeah, there you go. Hey, I'm a huge Vasilevsky fan. Am I overstating the importance of him in this series?
No, not at all. I mean, he's the guy back there. Even in game 4, okay, they win the game 6-2, but at first period, they were outshot 15-7. I think they were outchanced like 18-8. Even though Tampa Bay has a 3-1 lead, I think that just shows how efficient they can be when they do get scoring chances. Vasilevsky he let in 2 goals, but he was the number 2 star of the game, and that was with 2 guys who had 4 points that night. So he's the backbone of this team. He has been for really the last 3 years. When they don't have their defensive structure, they know that they can rely on him. When he's on his game, it's hard to beat him on a nightly basis. And, and that's what Florida is now up against, right? Down 3-1 in this series. Can you beat Andrei Vasilevsky 3 straight games? That's a tall task.
Yeah.
Yeah, Eric, nothing speaks to his value more than the fact that he's got a goals against average over 3 per game, but he's got a .919 save percentage, which is
he's
well
faced some high
average.
shot volumes. Yeah, he's faced some high shot volumes in the series.
For sure. You started down this path, but I wanted you to go a little bit farther down it for me with regard to the Florida Panthers. When the 2 Florida teams came in successive years, there was a lot of talk about, well, it's going to be fun. They'll end up being rivals. But it never happened because the Panthers weren't good enough and they just didn't face each other in a playoff series. And we all know that's what is needed for a rivalry. But this team with Bill Zito and what he's done this year, like I've watched this series and I thought, man, this could be fun for a number of years.
And that's the hope, right? If you're trying to build hockey in this state, we talked about it before the series opened and, John Cooper had the great line. It's that with this series going on, like every sports bar in the state of Florida is going to have this game on. You're going to see 2 Florida hockey teams playing a playoff game. And, for so many years, it was a forced rivalry, a manufactured rivalry in a lot of ways. You had the Sunshine Cup when the 2 teams first came in. You had the Nextel Cup, the Governor's Cup. I mean, they tried everything to try and force this to be a rivalry just because of the geographic nature of the teams. But we know it has to be in the playoffs. There has to be something tangible to play for, and that's moving on in a playoff round. And, with what the Panthers have. And it's amazing, too, because the Panthers were a pretty good team last year. They were right there in the thick of things when they hit the pause button. Didn't go their way in the play-in series against the Islanders. But even that team, Bill Zito's brought in, I think in talking to George Richards, I think he told me there were 10 players that started game 1 that were not on the ice in that play-in round last year. So he's rebuilt this team rather quickly. And the interesting thing is, even though they have Sergei Bobrovsky, it looks like Spencer Knight's going to be the guy in net, because it looks like he's getting the start tonight in game 5 to try and save their season. If he comes as advertised, he's going to make this an even better series, because then you're going to have Vasilevsky and Spencer Knight maybe going head-to-head here in the next year or two. And, I looked it up last night. Vasilevsky was the 19th overall pick in 2012. Well, Knight was the next highest drafted goaltender in the first round between those two dates. He was the 13th overall selection. We had Askarov last year by Nashville, go a little bit higher, but between those two dates, between the 19 draft and the 12 draft, those were the two highest goaltenders drafted. And, good chance we're going to see him face-to-face tonight and probably for a number of years.
Well, so what happens? Does Bobrovsky become the league's first $10 million backup goalie? Because they're not going to be able to move him. You can't buy him out. Like, what happens there? Like that, we've never seen a situation like this.
Yeah, we all thought it too, right? When they drafted Knight, and then 5 days later they signed Bobrovsky to a 7-year contract. You're like, trying to do the math here, and I know Spencer Knight's only 18 years old, but he ain't going to wait till he's 25 or 26 to come to the NHL. And now here he is at the age of 20. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's a very difficult buyout. With the way he's performed too, you're not going to be able to move him for that kind of money. It's going to be interesting to see. He might have to just be the $10 million backup and be the mentor to Spencer Knight.
This series got a little nasty too. He's pushing and shoving after all the whistles, it seems like. And then yesterday, the last game, Kucherov gets slashed across the knee. I'm not suggesting he was pulling the shoe or faking or anything. It didn't seem like that bad of a slash. Was it that bad?
It's hard to tell, because there was only a couple of angles that you could even see it, because it was so far behind the play. But as you know, Tommy, that's like the one area that you don't have a lot of protection, right? Like those tendons and those areas right behind the knee. So it probably would just ended up being a stinger more than anything else. It sounds like he's fine. But yeah, you're right. This series has gotten a lot more physical and nasty, and it's probably just based on the fact that they faced each other 2 times before they even started the playoff series. And that first meeting, right before the end of the season, I think there were 184 combined penalty minutes and 3 fights. And, they were both trying to set tones for the playoff series. And it kind of spilled over a little bit. And let's face it, this will be the 7th consecutive time these two teams faced each other. And even in a year where you face your division opponents 8 times, I'm sure they're sick of seeing each other.
Yeah.
Eric, Tampa is obviously the defending Stanley Cup champion. They got the number 1 goalie in the league. They have arguably at any given time the number 1 defenseman. He's at least in the top 3. And then they end up getting Kucherov for the postseason back healthy. He's their leading scorer. As one of my friends would say, that ain't right. They're just such a different team, even with Kucherov there.
He's such I've used the word maestro, especially on the power play. He's just the way he thinks the game and sees the game. Go back to the tying goal in game 1 where they're, setting up, and he's over on that right circle, and he's already scored twice in the game. So he's aware that he scored twice in the game, and you can bet Sergei Bobrovsky was very well aware that he scored twice in the game. So he rears his stick back, asking for Victor Hedman to bring in the pass. So he's showing shock the whole way, right? Because they know they have to respect him. But I guarantee you, before that puck ever left Victor Hedman's stick, he knew he was not shooting it. He knew exactly where he was going. He knew what Braden Point was set up. And, you watch the replay, you see how much Bobrovsky overplays the shot because they have to respect it. And you see the defenseman, the down low defenseman and the high forward just come over enough to open up all that space for Braden Point right there in the bumper. And it's that kind of a difference that he makes. And, it really is amazing to watch, too, because you think of the time off that he missed. And I know he'd been skating for about the last 6 to 8 weeks, to try and build up and get ready for the postseason. But for him to come in and perform the way he has, he had 9 points in 4 games. It's incredible to see what he's done and what he's been able to perform with after so much time off.
Okay, we're saying all this great stuff about Tampa, but the one thing I think we're missing is how bad, to this point, Florida's goaltending has been. Do you think if they've gotten better goaltender, that this series could be a lot different?
Oh, for sure. Especially like you expect Bobrovsky to be better. He was the goalie in 2019 that knocked Tampa Bay out the year they won the President's Trophy when he was with Columbus. But that's what Tampa Bay can do to you. They've got so much depth that they don't have to rely on Kucherov to be the guy to score. They don't have to rely on Steven Stamkos to be the guy to score. They've gotten production. They got a shorthanded goal for Blake Coleman. Yanni Gourde's got a couple of goals. Alex Killorn had 2 big goals there in Game 4. They can just beat you in so many ways offensively. And the funny thing is like the goaltending hasn't been bad. Like there hasn't been too many goals that Florida's let in. You go, ooh, that's a bad one, right? Yeah. Because it's just the quality of opportunities that Tampa Bay has created. Would you like your goalie in those situations to maybe come up with a save that maybe you shouldn't? Absolutely. If you're Joe Quenneville, you want to see that happen. And I think that's part of the reason why they're turning to Spencer Knight, because, who knows, maybe it's a goalie that Tampa Bay hasn't seen. Maybe you can catch, pardon the phrase, lightning in a bottle with a 20-year-old goaltender to try and save your season. Because let's face it, too, the other thing is like Chris Driedger, as good of a year as he had, and he probably earned the Game 1 start, but because you got the $10 million goalie, you got to go with the $10 million goalie, because Driedger outplayed him pretty badly during the regular season. Well, he's a UFA at the end of the year. He sees the depth chart. He sees the $10 million guy and the rookie. He's not coming back. So, are you going to go back to Chris Driedger to try and save your season? And then you obviously don't have a lot of confidence in Bobrovsky right now. So, to me, going to Spencer Knight makes a lot of sense.
And Reeders, he won the first game, correct? He was in the net?
No, he lost. Bobrovsky started Game 1.
Right.
And then Driedger started Game 2, played well. That was the game that was 2-1. And then he was the one in net that in Game 3 where he let in 5 in the second period.
That's right. Yeah.
Eric, just getting off the playoffs a little bit, so it's just because I've thought about this and I wanted to ask you about it. Do you think Tyler Johnson is definitely going to be a member of the Seattle Kraken? They sort of figured that out. Certainly they would need still to move his money, at least I think, in order to make their salary cap situation better.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting expansion draft for Tampa Bay. Are you going to use the 8 to protect 4 defensemen, because they don't have depth on D that they certainly have at the forward position? So do you choose to protect the 8 skaters? The thing with Tyler Johnson is obviously there's the connection, right? Because he's from Spokane and Seattle, and even though there's a few-hour drive apart from each other, there is the tie-in there. But if I'm Ron Francis, and Ron Francis was at the 2 games in Tampa most recently, and I'm watching Tyler Johnson right now, I'm not so sure I take him. I don't know if I need a marketing guy, because that's what Tyler Johnson would essentially be, right? Somebody who can help sell you tickets. I don't think the Seattle Kraken need to help sell tickets right now. I think there's a lot of excitement in that market for them coming into the league, next season. To me, I guess the only way I could foresee that being a sure thing that Tyler Johnson goes to Seattle is if Julian Brisebois, the general manager here in Tampa Bay, works out a backdoor deal similar to what we saw that a lot of teams did with Vegas, including Tampa Bay. They had Vegas take Jason Garrison off their roster. But either way, they tried to move Tyler Johnson last year, put him on waivers twice, tried to move him via trade, and they just couldn't find any way to get it done. So he's the guy that you're going to have to alleviate some salary cap space one way or the other, whether it's through the expansion draft or another method, because, all they did with the Kucherov injury and long-term injury, they kicked their salary cap concerns down the line, and it's going to come up again this summer.
Well, I've heard that any discussion starts with Tampa giving up someone they really don't want to give up to get Johnson, and if it's not the Kraken, it would have to be someone else who the only people that you can look at. Would they give up like a youngster like Foote in order to get that done, or some kind of deal of that nature?
Well, and there's their lack of defensive depth, right? Like, are you willing to give up Cal Foote, who really he's the only first-round draft pick in the last 6 years, not counting last year, that's still with the team? One way or the other, they've either traded all their first-round draft picks away, or they've left the organization. So that's why I said it's going to be an interesting way that Tampa Bay goes to the expansion draft and what they're going to do to try and protect players and who they want to protect, because they've got the depth of forward. They might just be in a situation too where, all right, we have to leave, Andre Palat exposed, or Yanni Gourde, or Alex Killorn, and hope that Seattle maybe takes one of those guys who have a little bit of a higher contract as well to try and alleviate it, and then just deal with the situation after that rather than trying to do a deal to force Seattle to take somebody that's more off their roster.
Well, that's one of the I think GMs learned from the last expansion is that you can be so busy trying to get the team not to take someone that you'll end up giving them more than the value of the guy you're trying to protect. So I think a lot of GMs are saying we're not going to do that this season. And we got to give Brisebois credit. Like you said, he kicked the can down the road a little bit, but that was creative in the way he did that. So maybe he'll figure something else out. Tom, go ahead.
And you mentioned Tyler Johnson that Seattle wouldn't take him. Has he not played well in your mind?
He hasn't. You look, and probably some of the off-ice stuff is probably effective. And I mean, look, he's been waived twice. He was scratched opening night because of business situation, so he wasn't there when they unveiled the Stanley Cup banner, even though he's been a big part of this team since 2014. So I'm sure in some ways that's probably affected him. But they tried. They tried to put him in a top-line role because of the injuries, especially when Stamkos was out. He's playing second-line wing. He's definitely more comfortable at center. But they tried to play him a wing all year, and even now he's fourth-line center for this team. And we don't wonder around here when Barclay Goodrow is healthy, assuming he will be healthy to come back, if Tyler Johnson's not the odd man out when you get to it. So that's kind of where we're at with him. His game is definitely not up to the level that we're used to seeing him, and to the point where he might not even be in the lineup.
Wow.
Well, Eric, we've run out of time. This has been a quick session. We appreciate having you on. I suspect we're going to go a few rounds with the Lightning, so hope to have you back in the not-so-distant future.
I look forward to it, guys. This is always a lot of fun.
Yeah. See you, Eric.
Thanks, Eric.
Take care.
That's Eric Erlandson, the Lightning Insider. He has a subscription-based deal. If you're a follower of the Lightning, you should probably plunk down a few bucks and get him on your docket, because Eric is wired. You can tell when he talks to us that he knows everything that's going on with that team.
Hey, really quick, Kevin, I just got to, our listeners are like some intelligent people, and I just thought we should see this. Tom created one of his most extraordinary looking dinners yesterday. Have to admit, maybe think of something else besides hockey. So I just want to get that in there. So,
well, you went with a different, you went with just the salmon with the salad.
Yes.
Which was, you just added a different wrinkle to it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, it's still salmon, still salad, but you did it, it was not mixing it. You said your salmon and your salad.
Right. So, I was very proud of my presentation too.
To be honest with you, I expected that we would start the show with us, with you reading the apology letter that you sent to Matt Duchene.
No, he should be sending me a thank you letter for getting him going. Matt, what did two of them, both Johansson and Duchene? I watched them play yesterday. I was like, where you guys been all season?
Well, that's the question I really have for you, the serious one, and not joshing one. And that is this. Is what we see now, Johansson has goals in 2 consecutive games. That was a huge goal and a spectacular goal by Duchene in that goal. Is that who Nashville really is, or is this kind of just an aberration? It'll just go away.
Well, see, for me, it's what I've been looking. When I look at that lineup, that's the way they should be playing. That's the way those 2 players should be leading that hockey team. They're that talented. It's the way they're playing. It's the results they're getting. I think Duchene, didn't he get hit in the face or something, had to leave the ice, come back? Like, he played with some grit. Like, he played a game like he really was committed. But when you watched them during the regular season, that wasn't the way they were playing. That's the capability that both those players have. So I guess to answer your question, it's a little bit of both. If those guys play that way, then that team should be that good. That should be how they play. The problem is that they haven't played that consistently to lead the team that way. And they clearly are being leaders. Johansson's playing tough out there and physical. It's I mean, that's what those players should be, and that's what that team should be.
Well, although as well as that those guys have picked up their game, this series isn't tied if not for Saros, who's been fantastic.
Yes, yep. And I don't think Carolina's playing as well as I think they can either.
I would agree with that. So I guess where are we at now? 2-2? Like that's demoralizing. I felt for Carolina. I mean, I'm thinking they were going to be done with that series quickly. So if I'm thinking that, probably they were too. Maybe that was part of the problem. I don't know.
Well, I think it's a little bit of a wake-up call for them because I'm sure. Listen, and we touched on this before. That here's a team that really hasn't had that level of success to be where they were in the standings, right? So they going in, and I think watching them play. It's not that they're playing bad, but I don't think they're playing hard brand of hockey that Rod Brind'Amour, the coach, wants them to play. So maybe it's a wake-up call that says, "Hey guys, listen, here it is. We told you, you better be ready to play." We let these guys back in the series now, and they are going back to Carolina too. And do they have people in the building like Nashville did?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
Well,
I think that's an exceptional observation because the Carolina Hurricanes are not the Tampa Bay Lightning. The Lightning have been around the block. They've seen it all, done it all. They failed. They've succeeded. You learn as much when you fail as when you succeed.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Carolina just hasn't been together as a good team long enough to go through all these experiences. So, I bet there's some self-doubt here. They just haven't went through it enough.
Right. And it could be a great learning lesson for, Brind'Amour now to have him watch the film a little bit and say, guys, listen, here's what we played during the regular season. Here's how we played. And we're not playing that way now. We're taking shortcuts. We're not working as hard as we worked. So maybe it's something that I guess the positive side of it is that, he could sit with them in the film room and say, guys, okay, so this is what we're doing. We're fine. We're going to win. We can still win this series. No problem. But here's what we have to get back to do it. So in some ways it could be a positive thing for him too. But
the other problem too is like best of three, which is what we're down to.
Yeah.
Man, that always feels like a coin flip to me.
I agree. Yeah. Now Nashville's got some confidence now too, right? So
and they got a hot goalie. And you feel so. I mean, we've talked about this so often, but it just bears repeating. When you have a guy behind you that's making
just teeny up here,
saves, do you? I mean, you just feel like you can go up and do your thing because he's going to save your bacon.
Right. Yeah. So all those little things that maybe you aren't doing correctly on the ice, he lets you get it. Vasilevsky was doing that for Tampa too, not the whole game against Florida, but he certainly did that for them too. But that's a good question by Susan. If Edmonton is eliminated, does that diminish McDavid's season?
I don't think it diminishes what he did in the regular season, but what it does do is, how often have I said that the league needs to get Connor McDavid in the playoffs because we want to be able to see him in the postseason, and that was on the Oilers that they didn't surround him with enough ability to get him in. Well, now they have gotten him in, and he's not doing it.
No, I know.
That's on him because the Jets, the Jets have done a good job against him, and part of being a superstar is getting it done in the postseason. Sidney Crosby gets it done in the postseason.
Yes, exactly. Those star players. So now the seed gets planted. Is he not the leader or the competitor that you want him to be, right? Because if you're not going to do it in playoffs, that's the question. And once that seed starts getting planted, then people start talking like that. Now, how does that affect him? He seems like he's a competitive guy, so hopefully,
no, I don't think that that series is over yet. But boy, those first two games were pretty darn impressive.
Even in the last game, weren't they up like 3 goals with 9 minutes to play and let Winnipeg back in the game?
Yeah. So it's there's so much out there going on that now Pittsburgh's in a series again too. I thought they had that under control, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I did too. I really did. How about Washington losing the way they did to Boston? That really surprised me. I thought that series
it didn't surprise me just because Boston got it together at the right time, and at the end they were playing well. I mean, they're playing like Boston plays.
Yeah.
Like when you were watching them, didn't you just think, well, this is just how they play. They get it done.
But I guess I'm disappointed in Washington because I thought when they won the cup, they'd learned how to win and they could be the same team that Boston was. I thought there would be more of a.
Well, to me, goaltending was an issue.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a huge mistake, as we saw with the way the captain Alex Ovechkin treated it. He was very unhappy with his goalie to give up that wraparound.
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't think that was being a good captain.
No, it's not. He's a really emotional guy. I think he puts his heart into it. And
sure.
I'm sure he would regret that later on too. Yeah.
Yeah, but I've never understood why Boston fans have such a love-hate relationship with Rask.
Yeah,
they're always
agree.
down. I don't know what they want out of him. The guy, to me, is always very consistent, gets the job done. So
I kind of wonder too. Like I've heard Mike Milbury make some comments publicly. If people like stirring the pot there, right? Are they really making more of it? You're going to have down times, and some of it seems like it's become a way bigger issue. Yeah.
Yeah.
How the boys doing? How the dogs doing?
Well, the dogs are riled up. So either UPS is here or something that, they're being a little, we had some rain last night and it had been hot and my beasts don't appreciate the heat. Yeah. They like to find a cool spot. So they're happier now that it's a little cooler. So
have we talked since Nazem Kadri got the 8-game suspension? No, we have.
No, and I was going to ask you on that. My first impression on that was, it just seems like they're harder on Kadri than they are on Wilson.
Yeah,
that's a lengthy suspension.
Well, I thought it's a playoff. Like usually during the playoffs, there's shorter suspensions, right? The
sure, right.
Game.
Yeah, like 8 playoff games it feels like a 20-game regular season suspension.
Wow. So. And they had to do something. I get it, but do you think he targeted his head?
Yeah, I don't know. It was I
thought it was more that he was committed for the hit. The guy went down to shoot, and then I felt like he just couldn't get out of the way at that point. So he still has to be responsible for what he's doing out there, and there has to be some punishment. But 8 games, yeah.
Well, I wonder, and it almost feels like they gave him extra because they always the player says I'm that kind of player, and then you say, but you are that kind of player.
Yes, and he is, yeah.
Yeah, and so did they give him an extra 3 because he is that kind of player?
Right. What did Tom Wilson get when he hit the kid from Boston? Was that an 8-game suspension too during the season? I believe it was, wasn't it?
Well, I don't know. Yeah, that's interesting.
But to your point, I mean, like if he got 7 or 8 games for that during the regular season, and clearly he targeted his head, that was an intent to injure too. I guess the Kadri, like you're saying, that's like a 12-game regular season.
Even more to me, it seems more. Let me see what the suspension was here. It's terrible that we can't remember that. We're getting old, Tom. That's all.
We have so much going on, Kev. What?
So you got 7.
7. So you get 7 for that, and Kadri gets 8 during the playoffs.
Yeah.
How about Tavares too? We haven't talked since him too. I felt bad.
No, I know. Yeah, that was one of the things I wanted to ask you about because you're not in the media, so I'm biased. And that is, the Maple Leafs were unhappy of the photo that the Toronto Sun put on, where it was an ugly photo of his facial injuries, and
I didn't see that.
Yeah, the Maple Leafs didn't like that. Dubas came right out and said publicly that the organization was displeased with the presentation of that, and as a journalist, I'd say, well, you gotta show the truth of the incident. And but how do you feel about that? I mean, you're a player.
Yeah, they've got to show it. I mean, there's some other gruesome things that are shown just in everyday life that happen, right? It's the Toronto Maple Leafs. Everybody knew it was there. I mean,
right.
I almost wish, and I get that Dubas wants to stick up for his team, but when you start making comments like that, now it's almost like, okay, it fuels the fire to do it more, right? Because now it's getting more attention for it. So, I wasn't that worried about it.
Yeah, but
hold on, very important. I sense that Terry's in the room. Your wife, did she see my food yesterday?
No, she's not. She's still in South Carolina.
Oh, she is. Oh, okay. Yeah. Has she got access? Like, would she be able to get on Facebook and see it, or anything?
I don't know what she's been doing with social media. So, it's pretty important that she sees. I will talk to her about it.
Okay.
She knows. Like I have told her that it's important that she stays up and current with your cooking.
Thank you.
And she's well aware that that's an expectation.
Somebody asked her earlier too. Barry Shelley wrote, "What does Kevin think of the World Championships?" I haven't been watching too much. Canada's down.
Well, I mean, what's fascinating to this one is that because of COVID, so we don't have the normal talent level that we
Right.
usually have. So, Canada doesn't have a lot of, and, the NHL season went longer. So, this
Right.
NHL or fewer NHL type people involved. So, Canada gets upset by Latvia, and then they get beat by USA, which is another group. Now, saying that somehow USA ended up with Robertson out of the Dallas Stars, who is really the second best rookie, and he's fantastic.
Yeah.
And he makes a big difference out there for that team. But USA beat them 5-1 Canada. So I think it's going to me. It makes it an interesting tournament because who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So I think it's just one of those quirky tournaments where
Sure.
we could have some unusual results.
Softball, where is the tournament being held? It's terrible. I don't know.
I think it's in Latvia.
Oh, is that what it is? Here's a good question here too. Tom Experiment, how do you guys feel about Nick Foligno going after Perry after his Ferris hit?
I didn't feel like that was a Perry. Didn't.
Yeah. I mean, Perry's got a reputation. He's done some stuff in the past, but clearly that was an accident. And I don't know if Foligno felt like
for sure. That's how I felt it too. And I get why they do it, but I always, it just always bugs me, especially too when a guy has to pay a price for landing. In this case, this wasn't the case here, but it always reminds me of when a player lays a clean hit on a guy, and he still has to pay a price for that.
I guess I go back to the part of the problem that the Rangers had and ultimately fired the coach and GM and president was particularly a hit that Matt Martin made on Trouba and gave him a concussion. It was a clean hit, and there was no response. But again, I'm with you. I don't, and especially in today's game, I don't think fighting is the answer to that. But there has to be, you have to go and play hard. Okay, like in that case with Matt Martin, the rest of the Ranger team should have been pounding him all night. They don't have to fight him because frankly, they don't have guys that can fight him. And I think with Perry's hit there, okay, maybe it gets your team fired up. Go over and hammer Perry all night then. Gets you a little bit more fired up. But,
Yeah. Well, I'm sure Foligno thought he was just, standing up for your guy.
And he's a relatively new player to Toronto. When he's got to show that he's got.
Exactly. Yeah, and I really like Foligno, so I think he's the type of guy you want on your team. So,
Absolutely.
and I'm sure they appreciated it. It was in that case it was the thought that counted.
So what? And that series, Toronto Montreal. I mean, Montreal scared him a little bit here, but don't you think Toronto should win that series?
What I thought in that first game, how often do we see in playoffs where you expect a series to go a certain way, and then the other team wins the first game, and then you go, uh-oh, and then the series just settles into the way it should have been in the first place.
I remember I got traded out to Los Angeles in the playoff series that year. We played Edmonton in the first round, and of course Edmonton is still Gretzky and all those guys. And first game we went out and beat them pretty good too. And you just see the feel in our room though. We like, oh god, look what we started now. Next game they went out and hammered us like 11 or something like that, and then won the next 3 games. So just woke them up.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, we've probably run our course today. We've gone beyond our usual time, but we appreciate everyone for tuning in, and join us again on Wednesday when I hope to have another guest. We'll be talking more playoffs. We'll probably have some more series ended. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, and Kevin, you can follow Kevin on hockeybuzz.com, and then you'll get your other podcasts with
Bob Duff on Tuesdays and Thursdays, 4:00, hockeydebates.com.
That's right. And you can listen to the radio version of this show on radio.co at 365 Sports. Have a great day. We'll see everybody on Wednesday.